Insight called, what is the name, Adam, of your residential treatment place?
The residential program is called LaunchPad Living.
LaunchPad Living, and the title of his talk, of his talk tonight, is an amazing, amazing title, which is failure to launch at any age. And I know a lot of you have adult children struggling with mental health issues who have had a failure to launch and become independent and create an independent life for themselves. So I welcome all of you to NAMI's April speaker meeting with Adam Sholder. I think most of you know what NAMI does. We are an organization, a nonprofit that fights advocacy issues with the state of California to try to get some laws shifted and changed. We educate families at a very high level, truly a graduate level, so they can cope and be able to speak to psychiatrists with equanimity and kind of knowledge. They're not intimidated by professionals. And we have peer classes and peer support groups. And I take my hat off to any peer who manages to stay on this earth, take their medications, and fight for a quality life for themselves. It's no easy task when you've been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, OCD, panic disorder, any of these mental health challenges, and to comply with the treatment program and fight for your life, which is really what individuals with mental illness have to do. It's harder and they run up against many obstacles. So I welcome all of you who have mental health challenges tonight, and I welcome all the family members who have been so affected by their relative's brain being kidnapped by a mental illness, and thereby the whole family is kidnapped into a maelstrom of despair, agony, worry, uncertainty, rage, grief, just a lot of intense emotions. Because the adult child or the spouse you were expecting is really not that person you were expecting. It's somebody else struggling with a mental health issue. So I welcome all of you, and please.
Erin, can you have everybody mute themselves because there's some noise going on from somebody?
Sure, let everybody mute themselves except for Adam Sholder, who is going to be speaking in just a couple of minutes here. If you can mute yourself to take out the backroom noise, that would be great. So Adam Sholder has a history. He's executive director of the Insight Enrichment Group. He is one of our best family support group facilitators. We have 3 family support groups that occur every month. He's also a presenter for our Ending the Silence program, which goes into high schools, colleges, juniors highs, to talk about mental illness, being a family member, and mental illness being one that's diagnosed. Adam created this enrichment group, provides individual and integrated psychosocial support. He provides skills education there. He provides executive functioning coaching and case management to teens and young adults living with mental health conditions. Recognize the need for meaningful work for many of his clients. The Insight Enrichment Group establishes their peer mentoring program in 2010, a long time ago, and established their independent living program, LaunchPad Living, in 2018, followed by their peer-led nonprofit creative community, A Gap in the Forest. A Gap in the Forest sounds amazing to me for an individual with a diagnosis to find themselves and to find an identity that works for him through education and advocacy. Adam also maintains numerous speaking engagements and educational presentation. He is a volunteer for NAMI, running our support group for the past several years, and he says about that, "I truly appreciate all the NAMI offers our community by way of support, education, and resources." This presentation, Failure to Launch at Any Age, aims to educate families in the NAMI community with this all too familiar topic and provides information about alternative adjunct community-based treatment and support options for individuals living with chronic mental illness. So I turn this meeting over to this highly compassionate and educated Adam Sholder. And Adam, I turn the meeting over to you if you want to use a PowerPoint. I think we're set up for that, or you could just talk and share. And is it okay with you if we record this, which will be on our website afterwards? You and all our other previous speakers, we put on our website for those who miss the speaker meeting and can listen later.
Absolutely.
So it's okay that we do that? Okay.
Definitely.
All right, Adam, I'm turning it over to you, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing you talk myself.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Lots of familiar faces. Good to see you all. Really appreciate you all being here. Very grateful for being here, for all the work that NAMI does. Really happy to be a part of the extended NAMI family in my role as presenter for Ending the Silence and co-facilitating the Thursday night family support group, and just everything that NAMI provides to our community is fantastic, and just a lot of appreciation, and really appreciate being here this evening, and all of you for being here. So Sharon did a great job introducing me. Thank you. I'm going to give just a little bit more background and history before I jump in, just for a point of reference of where the information's coming from, and then we will jump in. I'll share my screen. I have some slides that go along with the presentation here, and I'm going to try to get through this in about 45 minutes because I'm more than happy to answer any questions that may come up. If you put questions as we go in the chat box, I know we can at the end go back and review those, and certainly have time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. So as Sharon has said, I've been doing this kind of work for a long time. My background is in education, and I've really my entire professional career has been in education and mental health, which has been about 30 years now, which hard to believe when I say it out loud, but that's how long I've been doing this. And I had a really amazing opportunity early on in my career to develop a program from the ground up in Seattle that was funded by HUD, by a grant through HUD, and under the umbrella of the Boys and Girls Club. And it was a program that was developed to be on site in low-income housing to really address the needs of at-risk kids and to help kids that maybe would otherwise slip through the cracks for a variety of reasons. A lot of immigrant families, there were cultural factors, language barriers, just a lot of kids that maybe weren't really incorporating into the community, and were just in danger of slipping through the cracks, ending up on the streets after school. So we created a program that I was involved with from day one, from before the doors were even opened, to address those needs and just to create a safe space and be mentors, role models, create opportunities for kids. And it was just truly an amazing experience, especially early on in my career at the age that I was at the time, in my mid-20s. And I remember when we opened the program, day one, we were on site in low-income housing, and a few kids kind of popped their heads in, wanted to know what we were doing there and what it was all about. And within 1 year, we were serving 4 different low-income housing projects. We had over 200 kids. We were coordinating with 4 elementary schools. We had an entire computer lab that had been donated by Microsoft. We had a sports and recreational program, all within a year. So it was really an amazing experience as a way to launch a career. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that that was 95. So 27 years later, that program is still up and running up in Seattle. So it's something I'm really very proud of. And I segued into mental health. It actually was not necessarily a plan of mine to work in mental health, but in many ways, I think it was somewhat maybe a bit preordained, because I grew up in a family with a lot of mental health conditions. In my immediate family, chronic, pretty severe OCD, depression, anxiety, trichotillomania, substance abuse, suicide, and schizophrenia. I had a great aunt who I actually didn't know this person, this woman existed until I was well into my teens. My mother didn't know either. This was my great aunt, my grandmother's sister, who now with hindsight and more information clearly had schizophrenia and was pretty floridly psychotic. And so as a young woman, as a teenager, even as an immigrant to this country, didn't speak the language, very symptomatic. Understandably, she was put into, into hospitals and treatment centers at the time, but the family did not, other than just her immediate siblings, uh, never shared this information with the rest of the family. So we didn't even know that she existed until it just sort of accidentally came out when, like I said, I was already a teenager. And that was a really interesting experience because at first I was really angry at the family, thinking, how could you, put this woman in a home and not let anyone know? With some perspective, I can look back and realize not only is this someone who really needed that high level of care, but I also can have come to understand not only that this was an Eastern European family, there was cultural factors at play, and it was a very different time. Of course, this was, gosh, she was probably a young woman in the 20s, so very different time. So I've come to certainly understand and accept that, but I do think that just growing up in a family with a lot of mental health conditions, it just became something that over time became something I was very passionate about and felt a calling to that. And I realized that early in my career, education, developing these programs, I always worked in alternative education. There was this natural segue to use a lot of the skills that I had acquired along the way in terms of helping other people build skills and find their, really their direction, their purpose, their community, their people. And that's how I ended up segueing into mental health. And now I have been working in mental health for about 25 years. And as Sharon mentioned, about 18 years ago, I started Insight Enrichment Group, which has led to peer mentoring programs and LaunchPad, which is our collaborative living, and most recently our nonprofit, which is a completely a peer-driven, peer-led creative community. So that is a little bit more about my background, and that is really kind of sets up a little bit of the context of what I'm going to talk about today. I will start my presentation here. Hopefully you can all see this. So this is called Failure to Launch at Any Age. It is we're going to be talking about community-based treatment, psychosocial support for individuals that are living with a mental health condition, as well as their families. These are a few of the things. This is a little bit more clinical here, but really what we're going to be talking about is just understanding failure to launch, some of the contributing factors to this, learning about community-based treatment, psychosocial support, the goals and objectives of this particular kind of support, how it can be helpful to individuals, their families, and clinicians as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the evidence of efficacy we have for this kind of treatment, and specifically I want to talk about peer support. And then hopefully we'll have a little time. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to identify who can really best benefit from this kind of support and how to establish a solid community-based team. So those are our goals. Really quickly, this is some of my sort of driving philosophy, or the things that I really find important in the work that I do and this kind of work in general. Again, my background in education, so I'm always looking to educate, to advocate for clients, and improving our mental health care system, and collaborating. It may be cliche to say it takes a village, but it does. And when, especially, the work that NAMI is doing, and so many other people out there that are really working to collaborate and work together to provide the kind of support that's really necessary. So one of the mottos with Insight Enrichment Group we talk about is learn, grow, and live. So for me, it's really about, again, education based, right? Learning so that we can grow as individuals and really live to the fullest potential. And so when we're living to our fullest potential, for me, what that is about is connecting with people and making sure that people have a sense of community, the place, that they are connecting with others, and ultimately living a life with purpose, a life with meaning to their fullest potential. And so these are just some of the sort of driving philosophies that really I keep in mind in the work that I do. Okay, so failure to launch. So sometimes it's informally referred to as Peter Pan syndrome, right? This is the phenomenon of adult children not making the transition to adulthood, just not being able to become independent and self-reliant. I have the term up there, hikikomori. This is a Japanese term because this is something that in Japanese culture we see, which is pretty much failure to launch, with one unique difference, is that with hikikomori, there is not necessarily an underlying mental health condition, at least not a chronic mental health condition. We see anxiety, depression, but hikikomori is failure to launch without something like a bipolar, schizophrenia, schizoaffective. But I put that in there because it speaks to some of the cultural factors that can be present with failure to launch. And also there is an effort being made right now to include this as part of the DSM, that hikikomori, that failure to launch in and of itself is a form of a mental health condition. And so I always like to mention that this is a thing, this is a real thing, failure to launch. And it's not always just due to a mental health condition, although that is going to be where a lot of the focus is today on this presentation. So what are the contributing factors to failure to launch, some of the underlying causes? So of course we have mental health conditions, but there can be multiple things that contribute to this. Some of these things are very much interrelated. None of these things are mutually exclusive. There is overlap here. So in addition to mental health conditions, often we just see a lack of practical life skills. Finances can be a part of it. It's expensive out there nowadays, especially here in Los Angeles, but just about everywhere. And so sometimes there are very legitimate financial reasons that can be a contributing factor. One's concept of self and how it relates to the future. I think this is an especially big factor nowadays. I know my generation, my parents' generation, for a lot of us, it was sort of this just sense that things were going to be better, that we were going to be entering into our adulthood and the world was going to keep getting better. I think right now, unfortunately, there's a lot of uncertainty about that. And I think for young adults, teenagers, it can be a daunting thought to be out there in the world as it is, and that maybe they don't have that confidence that things are going to get better. So there can be a lot of just avoidance, and just the avoidance of adulting and the responsibilities that go along with that. And as I said earlier, cultural influence can certainly be a part of this as well. So these are a number of the contributors to failure to launch. Because failure to launch, essentially we're talking about adult children that have not made that transition into adulthood and are still usually living in the family home, there are a lot of family factors that are tied up in all of this. So one of the main things is that we see that parents remain in a managerial role where they are still parenting adult children. And this is typically, frankly, I don't think I've ever seen this to be truly a successful setup. First of all, it perpetuates a parent-child relationship. So we have parents that are still parenting and managing their adult children. It does not allow an adult-to-adult relationship to develop. And therefore there are often a lack of boundaries as a result of that. And it keeps everyone in those familiar roles and patterns where we have the identified patient, the identified caregiver, and this is a stress on the family dynamic, and it can maintain these roles, which can actually then contribute to the failure to launch, to the problem. There's also what I have here is the 80-50 problem. Generally speaking, what this refers to is as adult children that have not launched start to age and get to middle age in their 40s and 50s, their parents are getting into their 70s and 80s. And this brings up a whole new set of problems, which is that family members, parents are no longer in a position to be the caregiver at the level that they maybe had been. There are financial considerations. What happens after they're no longer able to provide or be there for their kids? So this becomes a major factor to consider, which is why it's so important that we try to find ways to really promote independence and get the support in place sooner than later. Some of the challenges and obstacles that can present the barriers to independence. Typically speaking, there are really three areas that we can be looking at that are contributing factors: symptoms, skill sets, and the system itself. And I'll give a specific example. If I'm working with a client and it's a real someone maybe is capable of working, but it's just not happening. They're having trouble applying for work, following through with that process, obtaining or maintaining a job. It's important to identify which one or multiple areas where the challenges are coming from. So is the reason that someone is struggling with getting a job because we're dealing with a symptom, we're dealing with anxiety or social anxiety, depression, positive or negative symptoms of a mental health condition? Is this the reason that they're struggling to be able to follow through with this goal? Is it a skill set? Is it just the lack of know-how? Is it that no one ever really showed them how to put together a good resume or a good cover letter, or where to find the jobs, how to follow through just the whole interview, the whole application process, interview skills? So is it just a skill set that we're talking about? Or is it a bigger system issue? Is it, again, the avoidance of the responsibility and adulting, so to speak? Entitlement issues. I don't need a job. My parents have plenty of money. They should be supporting me. Why should I be working? Or that there is no problem for them to actually solve. If we have someone who's at home, they have their own room, they have high-speed internet, maybe there's a car, a refrigerator that's magically full of food anytime that they're hungry. Arguably, why should they be working? If they don't see some intrinsic value in that, all their needs are being met, so they don't really have a problem that needs solving. And it's important to identify, because it informs how we may provide the support, what kind of treatment we might be looking at, or how that support is going to be structured, if we know which ones of these factors are at play here. There is a school of thought out there, the tough love school of thought, the let someone hit rock bottom. This is something that I do understand in certain circumstances. There may not be a lot of other options, and this is a road that has to be taken. I'm not a huge fan of this philosophy. I'm not a huge fan of letting someone hit rock bottom. This is a high risk situation. What I much prefer is the idea of allowing people to gently fail. This is a low or lower risk situation. I never really want to see someone crash and burn and ultimatums like that. And frankly, sometimes families out of frustration will put those, the tough love, the hit rock bottom ultimatums out there, but understandably, they're not really willing to follow up with that because it's a high risk situation. So finding ways to allow people to learn from mistakes, from gently failing. I'll give an example. I had a family that I worked with who they were fortunately in a position where they could afford to provide an apartment, a car, a weekly budget, a fairly decent weekly budget to their son, who had no responsibilities of any kind. And as a result, even with a decent weekly budget, was blowing through the money, asking for more. There was some entitlement there, no responsibility. So I had suggested to the family, let's have your son pay one bill per month out of his budget. How about the internet bill? And their first response was, well, what happens if he doesn't pay it? And I said, well, exactly. That's the idea. He may not. We're going to do everything we can to teach him responsibility, money management, to know what date that bill is due, to set money aside for it. But based on his history, there's a good chance that he won't pay that bill. And they were very concerned, well, what's going to happen? And I pointed out, this is a low risk situation. Worst case scenario, what happens? Maybe the internet company gives him a call. Maybe he has to pay twice as much next month. Maybe they cut off the internet. And they were very concerned. Well, if they cut off the internet, how's he going to, stream Netflix? How is he going to get online? And I said, that's exactly the point, right? The point here is the consequence is on their side of the equation. It's not for the family then to provide the bailout here, because worst case scenario, he has to deal with the consequences of not having internet. And ideally, we can learn from that experience and make some progress on personal responsibility. So if there is an opportunity to allow someone to gently fail, we set up a system where then they can learn from that, and they have to own the responsibility. And those natural, real world consequences, I think, are far more powerful than family members, again, trying to parent an adult child and yelling at them, you've got to be more responsible. They've heard that before. That system didn't work. Let's have the parents step out of that. They don't need to enforce that consequence. Spectrum is going to enforce that consequence. So I much prefer this approach to the much higher risk, crash and burn, tough love, rock bottom philosophy. Okay, psychosocial support. I tend not to use this term because, again, I feel it's a little bit more clinical, but so I will interchange community-based treatment, psychosocial support. But essentially what we're talking about is the nexus of social factors, thought, mood, behavior. And in my opinion, what that looks like, in my experience, what that looks like is we have a client-forward model. So it is a collaborative team model where people will work collaboratively as a support team. It is a lot of practical skills-based support. It can be different levels of support, so it can sort of meet the client, the individual, where they are at. Scalable, fluid, flexible, very individualized. It's really client focused. It's based on the client's goals, the individual's own goals. And providing support that meets where they're at. So, and it's also very relationship centered. We're going to get into that, the idea of the peer support aspect, or just a very relationship centered process. Little bit of background on this. This is going back 15 years, but the World Health Organization, for the first time in 2007, invited people with lived experience to attend a community mental health forum, so they would be able to have a voice in all of this. And the director of the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Department of World Health Organization, this is a quote of his, not only are community mental health services more accessible to people living with severe mental health conditions, also more effective in taking care of their needs compared to mental hospitals. And some of the things that came out of this forum back in 2007 was about integrating mental health care system within the primary healthcare system, rehabilitating long stay patients in the community, implementing anti-stigma programs for communities. Thank you, NAMI, ending the silence. Population-based effective preventive interventions, and full participation and integration of people with mental health conditions within the community. Really important stuff here. And what I have always found really interesting about this is, now finally the idea of peers, mentors, coaches is really catching on. But for as long as any of us probably can remember, there have been other forms of this, just not focused specifically usually on mental health, in other areas where there has been practical support for individuals to reach their goals. So tutors, personal trainers, nutritionists, support groups, 12-step, and sponsors. These have existed for a long time, and why it's taken a little longer for things like for peers, mentors, coaches to sort of be a part of that equation. It's just taken a little bit longer, but it is finally getting there. There's so much evidence of efficacy of this kind of support. Um, a 1/5 increase in tutored college students that would re-enroll as opposed to non-tutored. 90% outperforming students that outperform non-tutored students by nearly 90%. Personal trainers, partnering with a personal trainer increases success rate of fitness goals by more than 30%. Participants in Weight Watchers groups were 9 times more likely to lose 10% of their body weight as opposed to people that were not participating in meetings. National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism concluded stronger connections between community-based meetings and professional treatment will equate to a more efficient, systematic approach to managing alcohol use disorders. So there is a lot of evidence here to show the efficacy of other forms of community-based support. And when it comes to specifically peers, mentors, coaches, a study done by Mental Health America, peer support led to improved relationships with providers, increased satisfaction with treatment experience, reduced rates of relapse, increased retention in treatment. New England Journal of Medicine, from an article, mental health care should be delivered in diverse settings, schools, thank you again, NAMI, primary health care facilities, the workplace, patients' homes, which is how our coaches often work, and peer mentoring often is in individuals' homes. And peer support can prevent the helper-helpee relationship from being rigid and perpetuating the patient's role. A few more things here that just go to efficacy. According to National Library of Medicine, peer mentoring is a promising approach to prevent reoccurrent acute hospitalizations and the inability to establish tenure in the community. So peer support is really, truly gaining traction, which is great. You can see here that a lot of evidence, all of the things that go on the increase with peer support: social functioning, empowerment, hope, quality of life, community engagement, engagement in treatment, decreases in hospitalization, costs to the mental health care system, inpatient services, and decreased self-stigma. A lot of good things can come out of peer support, community-based support. So what I refer to people that are in the roles of peers or mentors or coaches, I call them accountability buddies. So this is a partner, friend, coach, peer, another person who is responsible for helping you stay on track with your goals. Now, I wish I could take credit for the term accountability buddy. I love it. I use it, but I cannot take credit for it. I must give credit where credit is due. And this actually was from an episode of South Park. Yes, the term originated in an episode of South Park, season 11, episode 2, Cartman Sucks is the name of the episode. But accountability buddy is where that term came from. And I use it all the time because I just think it's a great term, and it really does describe what we're talking about. Helping each other stay on track with goals, having that peer support, that community-based support. So who are accountability buddies? We are talking about anything from case managers to coaches, peer mentors, peer companions, sober companions, group support, supported living. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some resources for those a little bit later, but these are the accountability buddies. These are the people that, the boots on the ground, so to speak, that are there to really help hands-on in the community. So when is this kind of treatment indicated? Well, frankly, I think everyone can benefit from this, but some specific areas that really are indicative of when we might want to be thinking about community-based treatment, this kind of intervention. So when therapy, or even for that case, psychiatry, medication alone is not effective. even if someone is getting benefits from these things, but still not necessarily manifesting their goals or building that momentum in a realistic and meaningful way. So anyone who might be struggling to manage independence and self-sufficiency, again, that failure to launch concept. Stepping down from a higher level of treatment, someone if they've been in residential treatment or higher level of care and now they're stepping down, building in that community-based support for that transition. And in some cases to avoid hospitalization, again, building up that support in the community to avoid hospitalizations or repeat hospitalizations. So the benefits for the individuals who are receiving this kind of support. There is the increased accountability, efficacy, and encouragement. I call this the personal trainer model because if someone's working with a personal trainer, even if they're already going to the gym, once you start working with a personal trainer, accountability goes up. It's a lot different than saying, yeah, I'll get to the gym later today or sometime tomorrow, as opposed to, no, I've got an appointment at 2 o'clock with my trainer at the gym today. So the accountability goes up. The efficacy goes up. It's an opportunity to learn how to learn skills in the most effective way possible, where you're going to get the best results for the efforts being made. And then just encouragement, that cheerleader aspect of having someone who's there to push you towards your goals a little bit, but also has your back and is a part of that support system. So that's one of the huge benefits for individuals that are receiving this kind of community-based support. They're getting support with strategies, planning, options, resources, follow-through, consistency, so crucial. Assistance with real-world application of skills, techniques, and insights gained in treatment. The opportunity to use these tools that are acquired in treatment in the real world, in real life situations. Peer support, as we identified earlier, feels less therapeutic. It's a completely different milieu. It can address therapy fatigue for people who have been in programs, treatment programs, been in therapy, and they're just ready to move on, but they still need some level of support. And it can absolutely help to build self-advocacy, resilience, self-reliance, self-esteem, and confidence. There's also the benefits for families. I talk sometimes in our family support group on Thursday nights about parental PTSD. Sometimes I call this other shoeism. Even when things are going well, just waiting for that other shoe to fall. Mental health conditions are traumatic events. So the family also gets a lot of support when we have a system like this in place. Parents can retire or at least semi-retire from a managerial role, which, going back to what I was saying earlier, this can promote the adult-to-adult relationship as opposed to having that parent-child dynamic, which typically is not healthy for anyone. It can also provide support for the family because it gives the opportunity to redirect to a support system for the problem solving, for the managerial issues that otherwise might have been the family member's role, that they can actually redirect to a support system outside of the house, which therefore can reduce a lot of the conflict at home. So a lot of benefits for the families. And there are also great benefits for clinicians when we have a community-based team in place. One benefit is as long as there is an open line of communication, which is something we certainly strive for. I'm going to talk about communication in just a bit, but when we have objective reporting versus self-reporting, we've got that objective third party that can inform clinicians that then can better inform or guide some of the work that they may be doing. Increased accountability and follow-through with treatment goals. Again, support for the application of these skills, techniques, and insights out in the world, in real life. They can have someone that can potentially function as the case manager, as someone who is involved to coordinate the team with just general collaboration and communication, which allows a clinician or a therapist to preserve their role. They don't have to wear a lot of different hats. They don't have to be the coach. They don't have to be the case manager. They can just really preserve their role as the clinician. So there are really benefits for the individual, the family, and the clinicians here, which is also, I think, extremely important when you're considering putting a team like this together. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about some of the goals of community-based support. And, you know, I could have done this as a pyramid, but I see too many pyramids. So this is more like tiers, where we start with life skills and ADLs and create that foundation, build in balanced structure, build in the community aspect of it, and ultimately our goal is independence and autonomy, or as much as is achievable. It starts with those foundational skills. These are the ADLs, the activities of daily living, executive functioning. I simply refer to them as foundational skills because when you have a solid foundation, you can build a lot on that. If you have a shaky foundation, you can't really build those other things. You can't really go too high before everything comes tumbling down. So when you have a solid, stable foundation, I mean, you could build a skyscraper on that. So what I'm talking about here are the basics: time management, money management, organizational skills, prioritization skills, social interpersonal skills, self-care, self-managerial skills. I also include conflict resolution, problem solving, the things that, again, these ADLs, the executive functioning, the things that will create a solid foundation. And that's usually a good starting place. Once we have that in place, we can start building balanced, consistent, and meaningful structure. I almost always use the word meaningful when I talk about structure. Any of my staff, the clients that I work with, they'll tell you I almost never say the word structure without the word meaningful in front of it. And this can be, again, this can look different for different individuals. It's whatever might be meaningful for them. Paid work, volunteer work, school, whether it's working towards a degree or a certificate or just taking classes for fun, social recreational activities, therapy and treatment, part of that structure, exercise, activity, some downtime and self-care, and then again, those day-to-day responsibilities, the ADLs. Once we're building momentum with the structure, then we can really start connecting with others. And this is where the community sort of comes in, the community aspect, helping people find their place, their own community. And this can happen through support groups, fellowships, social sports clubs, again, group lessons or classes, school, volunteer work, again, paid work, meetups, peer groups, church, youth groups. There's a lot of ways that people can start connecting with others. And again, we're talking about continuing to build momentum. We build that foundation, we build in structure, routine, and then we start building in community. And our ultimate goal here is as much independence and autonomy as possible. So independent living, or at least semi-independent living, being able to maybe contribute financially, even if it's a small amount. The benefits to one's own self-esteem and confidence when they're able to contribute a little bit financially, having healthy relationships, utilizing the skills, utilizing the support, managing their symptoms, managing the stressors of daily living, and ultimately establishing a purposeful life, a meaningful life. This is our target. This is what we always want to be working towards. And this is in many ways, I mean, this is the role of any member of a support system. This is, for family to help with this, for clinicians, as well as the community-based support team, the coaches, mentors, the psychosocial elements of it, of a support system. So individuals that may benefit from community support. Again, I think just about anyone can benefit from this kind of support, but specifically, individuals who might benefit from therapy, but are still not moving forward with some of their personal goals, or benefit from therapy, but are just still struggling with some of the day-to-day life skills. Individuals whose lives maybe there's not balance in there. They might have limited social recreational opportunities or other imbalance with routines and their schedule inconsistency, maintaining schedules, routines, building that momentum, have not launched. In some cases, individuals that have actually come to meaningful conclusion with their therapy and are really ready to take that next step, are really ready to put the rubber to the road and put those tools to use. In some cases, people who maybe receive limited benefits from therapy or just are not quite ready to engage in meaningful therapy, but they still require some kind of support, or possibly stepping down from a higher level of care, from residential treatment, or individuals that, again, have been living from at home, haven't quite launched yet, and need that community-based support system to make that transition to as much independence as possible. So these are just some of the indicators of people that could potentially benefit from this sort of support. Here are a few factors for success, and this is hard because in a perfect world, individuals would recognize the benefits to them by this kind of support. Individuals would demonstrate this intrinsic desire for personal growth, insight and understanding of some of the challenges that they face, and individuals who do see value in working as a collaborative team. Not all of these factors are often going to be in place. This is in my ideal world, in Adam's ideal world, this is what individuals would see and be excited about this support. Not always the case, but these are some of the factors for success. And so occasionally part of the process is helping individuals even just get to this point, or even one or two of these bullet points. If the first part of the process is helping someone get there, that can really open the door for everything else. So, there is no magic formula. But if there were a magic formula, this is what it would look like. And this is, I'm shooting high with this. This is an ideal situation. But I think it's also important to note that a good rapport with a clinician or coach absolutely has a mood stabilizing effect. And it can be a particularly powerful one. It can be a potent mood stabilizing effect, and in some cases almost as potent as a medication, in the sense that that good rapport, having that support system, can truly, truly be beneficial. Now, again, this magic formula, if all of these elements are in place, or even a lot of these elements are in place, outcomes can be pretty good. But again, sometimes it's hard to get these elements in place. But having a great psychiatrist, if medication needs to be a part of that picture, so the psychopharmacological aspect, if necessary, is a part of that formula. Good rapport with a clinical team, that the individual has that click, has that rapport, like I said, that can have in and of itself that mood stabilizing effect. Having that community-based support system along with the clinical support system. A supportive family, a family that is able to be a part of the support system and is able to work within that system. Again, individuals who see value in this, that buy in, that recognize that this kind of support can really help to make a difference. Excellent communication among the entire team, with clear goals, clear objectives, and clear expectations. So, like I said, this is hard to get to, but it is a formula for success if we can get some of these, if not all of these elements in place. So that community-based team, it can look very different for different individuals. Different elements can be present as part of that team. So sometimes we're talking about just personal coaches and or peer mentors, sometimes supported living, having someone that can function as a community-based case manager. When someone is in residential treatment, there's usually somebody who is connecting all the dots and is sort of the point person. So having someone that can function as that point person can be a part of a community-based team. Sometimes they're one and the same. A coach can be a case manager. Other healthcare providers, other adjunct community-based members of a team, like trainers, nutritionists, tutors, sponsors, and again, family members are ideally a part of that team as well. When that team is in place, we want to have continuity of care. We want to be able to connect people to each other and have good continuity, good communication. Now, I know a lot of times individuals are not comfortable with this. They don't want to sign a release of information. They don't want people on their team talking to one another. And that's a factor that has to be considered. But when we can have that communication, again, this is an ideal system. we have, we can have an excellent psychiatrist, an excellent therapist, we can have a great coach, but if everyone, even if they're doing great work, is working in their own bubble, ultimately they're not going to function as an effective team, or at least not as effective as they can be when there is good communication, good continuity of care. So one of the things that is something to strive to get into place is a communication system. So who's going to be communicating? How often? And what form? What is that going to look like? Is this going to be, a weekly email, a monthly team family meeting, as necessary? What is it going to look like? What form is it going to be in? Who is a part of this circle of communication? Is there someone who's functioning as a team leader? Is it a case manager? Is it the psychiatrist, is sort of the clinical director of the team leader? Is the family included as part of this? And if so, how is the family included? How are they provided with updates? That line of communication, when that line is open, again, we're all working as a team, and that's really what it takes. Okay, so just a few resources that are out there and available to where to find these accountability buddies. So NAMI, of course, great resource. They've got their peer-to-peer classes, peer support groups, just a lot of resources, a lot of support can be available right through NAMI. The nonprofit that I established recently that Sharon mentioned, A Gap in the Forest, this is a peer-driven, peer-led community. Right now, it is mostly a creative community. There are meetings throughout the week, regularly scheduled, creative writing groups, a movie club. There's a filmmaking group. They're making a documentary, a mixed media book about a mixed media group about to publish their first book. We had a songwriting group. The person who was running that group ended up moving out of state. Everyone who runs the group, these are people with lived experience. These are peer mentors, and everyone that's participating is someone with lived experience. So there is a sense of community, working on meaningful projects together. And it is our goal to actually start a peer mentor training program with the goal of being able to offer peer support, peer coaching for free, to have those actually peer mentors trained and paid for their work so they can actually get some meaningful employment and work, being of service to others, and then offering that service for free. But at the moment, a lot of creative groups. Share Self-Help, they actually have a lot of support groups, a lot of interesting support groups, not just the standard stuff that a lot of us are familiar with. Great peer support there as well. There's a couple of programs out there. I'm not as familiar with them personally, but through the Department of Mental Health and Mental Health America, there's something called I Prevail through Department of Mental Health and 1 Degree through Mental Health America that connects people with resources, with some peers, with support systems. Like I said, I don't have as much personal experience, but these are some options that are out there. And a couple other options. These are more specific towards employment, but I'm a big believer of anyone that has the ability to work in and of itself is, I have a whole presentation just on the power of employment and recovery. I sometimes say it is the most cost-effective IOP that's out there. It provides structure, routine, connecting with others, responsibility, skills, there's a paycheck. So I'm a big believer if anyone can work, that's a goal to work towards. The Department of Rehab, if you are receiving benefits, SSI or SSDI benefits, this is a service that is already accessible, and even sometimes just with a letter from a doctor. This is a free service that helps people put resumes together, prepare for job interviews, connecting with employers, kind of teeing up job interviews, and they provide some of their own benefits above and beyond that. They'll help cover the cost of transportation, clothing if necessary for job interviews, so really great resource. And Job Corps is something that's still out there. This is really geared for young adults. I think it's like 18 to 25, and it's essentially like trade school. So it is learning a specific trade, but they also offer housing, food, everything is free. So it is a community that really gets established if you're in that program. And so there's just a few resources, and I know there's a lot of other resources out there, and some of you may have some great resources as well. To find those accountability buddies that are free or low cost, resources. One last thing I'm going to mention here, and then we're going to wrap up. I see it's just about 8 o'clock. The future of peer mentoring. As Sharon mentioned, I've been training peers to do peer mentoring for about 10 years. And I'm so happy that finally this is getting recognition and traction out there. And the passage of California Senate Bill 803, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, the Peer Support Specialist Certification Program Act of 2020 has been signed into law. This is a thing now. So in theory, and I say in theory because, right, the wheels of government and bureaucracy often turn slowly, but in theory, there will be established statewide requirements for different counties to develop certification programs to certify peer support specialists. So long overdue, but it's something that I'm so thrilled that is happening and is out there. And I look forward to this just becoming a known quantity, that peer support, community-based support, really the future of mental health support, community-based treatment and support. So I think that's it. So I am going to just jump to the end here because this is my contact information. This is stuff that I'm very passionate about and always happy to talk with families. If there's resources I can provide, information, questions that I can answer, don't hesitate. Please email, call. Definitely happy to speak with anyone, especially anyone that's coming through NAMI. Always will make the time to like I said, answer any questions. And speaking of answering questions, I'm more than happy to do that as well. I see we are right here at 8 o'clock, so let me stop my screen share here and bring it back to my full Zoom screen. So yeah, I am, thank you all. Thank you for being here and hanging in there, listening to the presentation, and any questions at all, I'm more than happy to answer. And yes, let's see. You know what? I can't quite see everybody.
Why don't you, because I can see them all, Adam, and I'll repeat the question and then you answer it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Because I can see everybody here. Right. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and I will call on you. I don't know if Adam can hear it out loud. If you speak, I think maybe he can.
As long as you take your mute off, I'll be able to hear you.
Yeah. So anyone that would like to ask a question, just raise their hand. There's a reaction at the bottom of your screen that can put a raised hand in your Zoom square. So thank you, Adam. That was a wonderful, comprehensive talk. I particularly like the idea of a gap in the forest, all that creative energy to have a community to bounce off of. I love that concept, and I love the idea of peer support. And I just have one question. These peer supports that you train, will they be able to charge for giving peer support individually?
Well, yeah, well, that's my goal, or that the goal of a gap in the forest is to develop a peer mentor training program that would train people with lived experience to be peer mentors and to actually work on those different tiers we talked about, the life skills, the ADLs, working on helping people connect with community opportunities, build that structure. And my goal with that is that the peer mentors this would be a paid position for them. So it would provide.
Would this be a paid position through you, or they could charge families independently?
Well, either way, whether it's through the nonprofit or whether then it just gives them the opportunity to get that certification and find employment elsewhere or individually. Absolutely. The goal would be that if someone is coming through a gap in the forest to receive that peer support, it would be free to them, because it's one of the things is that there's not a shortage of coaches and peers out there, but it's not always accessible due to just the costs that can be involved. So definitely want to be able to create a solid team of people that have great training to be able to be in that role. But then it would be free of cost to the individuals receiving the peer support, but it would be paid employment for the peer specialists.
Thank you, thank you. I see, Lynn, you have your hand up. Am I correct? You're kind of dark. You don't have much light around you, Lynn, so it's hard to see you, but I think your hand is up, so please
I
ask.
don't have my hand up. I'm sorry.
I see
Yeah.
Darius and then Sarah. So I know, Darius, you had your hand up a couple times during the presentation. Any
So
questions?
let's do Lynn and Doris and Sarah.
Well, I have a question. My name's Sarah. I'm in Hawaii. I live in Hawaii. I used to live in Los Angeles, which is why I still have the link. But I live on the Big Island, and there are hardly any resources here, unfortunately. So I have two questions. The first one is, I would love to somehow get a coach for my son to help him with life skills and getting a job and things like that. But because I don't really know anyone here, and you don't really know how to check someone's references and things like that, I'm wondering if there's any Zoom, if there's any way he could do like a Zoom with or a FaceTime with someone in LA who had like solid references from NAMI, if there was any kind of referral like that, referral service.
Yeah, well, I know that there are definitely coaches that are doing things virtually, like many therapists are now as well. Arguably there would be some things that could be certainly addressed, and a coach could be valuable in a virtual environment. And then there are in some cases where really being in person makes a difference, because it depends on the individual goals. So for example, if someone is working on, let's say, they need some help around some ADLs, maybe money management, time management. Maybe they're looking for volunteer work, enrolling in school. These are things that can be accomplished virtually fairly easily. But if the goal is to really get someone out of the house, there's isolation. We need to get someone into the community and find some things that are that they can participate in. That becomes a little harder to do virtually, because just being in person, sort of that hands-on component. So it would depend on sort of what level of support you might be looking for, but certainly there are coaches that can work remotely and work virtually. So
is there a place to go that, like NAMI would be able to verify that? Because, these people are so vulnerable, you don't want them to get into the wrong hands. So does NAMI have like a list or something like that?
I believe so. Yeah, Erin, I think on the website, right, there's a few resources there.
Well, Adam is one of the resources. We have a mental health coach by the name of Sanjeet Sahota that does a lot of work for NAMI. Mm-hmm. So Sarah, if you call me or go to Adam, he'll find you a coach. We'll find someone for you to work with through Zoom or FaceTime. My office phone is 310-207-3505. I'm a licensed clinician myself, but I work with family members primarily.
Okay, so that's 310-207-3505.
Yes, I'll put it in the chat. But okay, Adam's a good source. You can go to Adam. I'm sure he will help you find a coach too. We both will.
Okay. Perfect. And then the other question that I had was about a gap in the forest. Yeah. Is that only in Los Angeles, or do you also do that? Do they have virtual groups?
Right now it is almost all virtual. It started during the pandemic, and so we started virtually. We are working towards more in-person groups. Our movie club is going to switch to an in-person meeting, but definitely there is most of the groups are virtual at this time. And we do have people from other states that join in. So, even when it is entirely safe, we're getting pretty close to that, to being able to do things in person. There absolutely will still be the virtual component, because it just more people can make, even people locally. Not everyone. I used to do, years ago, I did a creative writing group that would be in person, and half the problem of that, or the challenge I should say, is just the logistics. If people don't drive, people in LA traffic just trying to get to one location. So actually we intend to keep it virtual, and then sort of pepper in some in-person meetings along with that as well.
So that's
Oh.
agapintheforest.org.
You got it. Absolutely.
A gap or just gap?
A gap.
A gap.
A gap in the
Well,
forest.
Lynn, I had called on you, so let's hear your question. Lynn?
Well, I didn't have a question. I haven't come up with one yet. So maybe it's better if I just don't talk and let somebody else share, because I don't really have a question. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay.
Darius, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Darius.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm known to NAMI West LA. Before the pandemic, I attended many of their in-person talks. They had very distinguished speakers, and I'm a suicide survivor. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm practically a doctor. I put my LinkedIn in the chat earlier. And I was just wondering, because on one of the other, I have to disclose, I'm, fortunate to have insurance and access to high quality of care. I've been seen by some of the most preeminent psychiatrists. I used to have 2 therapists, and that brings me to my question, which during one of the previous NAMI talks, I inquired about, I don't know if you know Dr. Amador. He wrote a book that was used by the NAMI in the San Fernando Valley, where my mom is very active. And it was just a ridiculous book that it said that psychiatric hospitals are benevolent, paternalistic institutions. And I posed that question when Dr. Lavander, he was a psychiatrist, he was on one of these talks, and he didn't answer the question. He was very busy that night. And he's also, ironically, the same person that told me you're not supposed to have 2 therapists. So I guess that's one question I should ask you. Do you think it's healthy to have more than one therapist? But anyways, I was wondering if what do you think about, and I've been in, I've encountered all sorts of people with serious mental illness in different hospitals. Thankfully, I haven't been in the hospital since 2020, but, it could happen any moment, really. So my main question is, have you read that book? What do you think about it? And do you think that psychiatric hospitals are really benevolent, paternalistic institutions? Because I'm a very good athlete, and I didn't used to smoke cigarettes before I was in the psychiatric hospital in 2020. And now I'm a chain smoker. So I'm sorry to monopolize the conversation, but I'll mute myself.
Okay, so, and your question was about the book that Dr. Amador wrote. You're talking about, yeah. I think that there's a lot of good information in that book personally. I think that the LEAP method can be a very effective tool to establish communication in challenging situations. So I do, really do like that concept. As far as your other question about, 2 therapists, that's really something that an individual along with their treatment team would have to determine. I know that there are therapists out there that, really believe, you can really only have 1 therapist, but sometimes therapists have very niche specialty areas where 2 could certainly work in concert together. But that is a choice that an individual would need to make with their treatment team.
The title of the book is I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. And it's the 4-pronged approach of communication LEAP: listen, empathize, agree, and partner. And it's an excellent book to communicate with someone struggling with mental health challenges for family members. It's an excellent book. And could you improve the quality of the relationship with your relatives struggling with mental health challenges? Or you improve the quality of your relationship with your parents if you happen to be the one struggling with mental health challenges. I think it's a Bible for communication, frankly. And I don't think, forgive me, but I don't think hospitals are benevolent institutions. I don't think they're compassionate institutions. I think they're often scary as anything, with the bright lights and the waking you up at 5 in the morning to take blood tests. I think they're scary places, and they can be traumatic sometimes. You know, unfortunately, I wish they were more compassionate, with soft lights and loving, compassionate nurse aides and loving, compassionate doctors.
And Sylvia, I see your hand is up.
Hello, yes, my name is Sylvia, and I reside in the city of Whittier. I have a son who has schizoaffective disorder, dual diagnosis, substance abuse, alcohol, marijuana. He's in a treatment program, and he's been there for a while. So it sounds like this program, having a peer mentor would be very beneficial for him. So how would I, connect him with a coach? How would I, initiate that once he's out of the residential program? And
There's probably a few ways. I think NAMI has some great resources, as Sharon had mentioned. I would be more than happy to speak with you as well. You could even talk with, at the program that he's at. As they are beginning to work on the plans for discharge, they may have some referrals or recommendations that they work with as well.
thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Shadi, are you raising your hand there? You were on mute. Just know you got to take yourself off mute there.
Okay, I think I got it.
You got
How's
it,
that?
Shadi. You got it.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm one of 6 siblings, and I take care of my paranoid schizophrenic brother. I have him involved with something called IHSS, and he's in a 2-bedroom through the housing authority. I have a live-in caregiver, and there's a lot of problems with that. So the gal that was talking from Hawaii about saying how they're vulnerable and we need to know who we have around them, it's a nightmare for me right now. Evidently, that caregiver needs care herself. And then I've got another caregiver who keeps insisting that I, as his sister, should not be involved with his care because I'm his relative. And I'm having a really hard time with this because I'm no longer allowed into the house. And we get along great, my brother and I think I've been a big help. So my question to you, Adam, is how do you feel about family support beyond the parent-child? We're 2 years apart, and I knew him before he became paranoid schizophrenic, who he was before he went into that mode. And I'm just wondering how you feel about parental.
Yeah, no, I think family involvement is crucial, and especially having siblings involved. I think it can be very hard. Well, it can be hard on all family members, and it can be very hard on siblings. I think when parents are still in a managerial role, that is when things can be exceptionally challenging, as I talked about. And so, I believe that parents are a part of the support system, but finding ways to, sort of back out of that day-to-day managerial role can be a healthy choice. When it comes to siblings, yeah, I think it's sort of the same thing. It's hard to be in a managerial role for a sibling, but being a part of that support system, I think, is crucial. And if you have a good relationship with your brother, I said earlier, a good relationship with a clinical, a clinician or a coach has a mood stabilizing effect. But same with really any good relationship, family, friends, these kinds of relationships can really help and be really beneficial. So, and
May I reach out to you about that and maybe coaching and somebody who can help me with this? You talked about communication, and I'm not getting any of it from this caregiver. She's so manipulative. I know I have to find somebody else, but I don't want to throw her out on the street. I took her in from living in her car. I took her and her cat in because my friend said, look, Shadi, she's good with autistic. She used to take care of autistic folks, and I trusted it. And I almost think she might be bipolar. I'm really in a bad place because if I take her out, he'll lose his housing voucher. I'm I'm under a lot of stress, guys. Sorry. I'm trying to
No,
do the best I can.
hear you.
But
No, these are challenging situations, and as I said earlier, right? Mental health condition. These are traumatic events, and it's traumatic for everyone.
well, yeah,
you
he's
know,
going in, forgive me for interrupting you, April 14th to the mental health clinic with a psychiatrist. Um, I'll see how he goes with that. But he's not letting me in. He's messing with the wiring. It's just I'm trying to get protective care. They denied it. I've got a lawyer from Bedzedek. I don't know if you guys heard of Bedzedek Legal Services,
Mhm.
but if there's anyone who needs assistance, they help for free.
Mhm.
So they're going to help to file an appeal. But I love your stance about the communication lines and the coaching and Sharon's the book. She said that's a great book for family members to read. If I could get the name of that book again.
Yeah,
Um,
it's called "I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help," written by
I-
Dr. Xavier Amador.
okay, Amador Amado.
Dor, I believe, is how you spell
Thank
that.
you. I'm not sick. I don't need help. Okay.
And if you come to our support group meetings with myself on Saturdays, Adam's on Thursday night, we talk a lot about communication skills, and we sort of teach them in the support group and
Yep.
kind
I'd
of
love to.
role play them how to use these support group tools. I mean, these communication tools. So
I'd
you
love
might
to.
join some of our support groups, Shadi, because
How would I
that
do
might
that?
be very helpful to you.
And how would I do that?
By our NAMI website, www.NAMILA. Adam's is on Thursday night, mine is on Saturday mornings.
Fantastic. And did I hear you right? Do you have a Facebook page?
Who? Adam probably does, I
NAMI. Does
don't.
NAMI have a Facebook page?
Shadi, hi, this is
Aaron, can
Erin.
you answer that?
Yes, hi Shadi. I'm Erin. I'm here,
Hi.
and we'll also put the we'll put the support groups listing in the chat, so you can have the direct link to our support groups. But
Thank
as
you.
Sharon said, if you go to our website and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a calendar of events. So you'll see all of our available support groups. There's also a wonderful resource navigation page that our CalHope counselors put together, and that's under the top where it says Get Help. And if you click that on the top of our website, it gives you a wonderful resource page. Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth just put it in the chat.
Oh, I see that.
So
Oh,
you have
thank
both of
you.
those links in there.
Thank you. I thank
Yes,
you so
absolutely.
much.
And
Those
we
are
do
Thank
great,
have a Facebook page as well. So NAMI WLA.
Okay.
uh,
Thank you, Adam.
great resources, and yeah, I would encourage you to check out one of our family support groups during the week. There's a Thursday night one, Saturday morning, Monday evening ones. A lot of support there,
Fantastic.
a lot of group wisdom, and I think a lot of people that could just be
And
there
I
to
just,
support you.
thank you, Adam. And I just want to thank Erin Raftery. The woman speaking is our executive director of NAMI Westside LA. She works overtime. She does 5 tasks at a time. I don't know how she does it.
Thank you,
She's
Erin.
kind of extra. So I want to introduce all of you to Erin Raftery.
Pleasure.
And I
Thank
know
you,
we
Erin.
probably have to wrap it up, but Tiffany, I see your hand is up. We got maybe one more question here we can get to.
Yeah, it's just real quick, because Shadi mentioned IHSS, and I'm an IHSS worker for my own son.
Oh,
But I just wanted to say, IHSS, you got to be really careful. I was caring for another woman, and she was trying to get me to use the money that we got illegally, and there are ways to prevent that, and there are ways to change caregivers. You
okay.
just have to call IHSS. They have a helpline.
Yeah, I'm
Because
familiar with
that's
CAS.
just, it's really alarming to hear your story. That's just not okay that you're not allowed to be involved because of the person who's being the caregiver. I just wanted to say
Yeah,
that real
she's
quick.
manipulating him. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard. Thank you so much. I
Sure.
appreciate, and I will look to them and hope they have mental health workers. That would be nice. I get worried that, it might be the wrong person and they get hurt or he gets hurt. I'm very concerned.
Definitely. There's a number you can call. You can, yeah, for sure.
I will do that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you,
Sure.
Wendy.
So any last questions here before we thank Adam? Any last questions? Any thoughts?
Mm.
Well, Well, I want to thank you, Adam. You've been most informative. You're a gentle soul. I can see that, and you've been at this business a very long time, and you've really created such a